Hello and welcome to Breast Friends Cancer Support Network. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michelle Beck. I'm a two-time 10-year survivor of breast cancer. I'm the patient programs assistant at Breast Friends of Oregon. And when I have time, I write at a blog called I Never Liked Pink. And that's also how you can find me on social media, but not very often because I'm busy. But I'm so thrilled to welcome my guest today, Helen McConnell. She's a personal transformation coach, author, speaker, presenter, and she's a certified clinical EFT tapping practitioner. And don't worry, we'll get into what that is, with over 12 years experience in helping people really tap and manage out their emotions. And she specializes in helping people identify and get rid of those limiting beliefs and the old negative thought patterns that really keep us stressed and anxious and keep us from achieving our dreams. She has written her first book, 10 Simple Things You Can Do Now to Profoundly Change the World. It's a very long title, but I love it because it tells you everything you need to know right there. And in this book, it gives detailed instructions for people like us to make extraordinary changes in their emotional and mental realms and creating global change. So you think start locally, change globally. I think that's the phrase. And using EFT, tapping, NLP, which I don't know what that is. We'll have to get into that. Visualization, energy profiling, and other modalities. Helen works with clients in person, groups, virtual, and she presents to organizations around the globe. You can find out so much more about her and her practice at helenmcconnell.com, just like it sounds, Helen, McConnell.com. And her motto is purpose, prosperity, and happiness. So we were so excited in October. Helen joined us and presented an educational session at our Breast Friends Luncheon in October, and it was a huge success. The guests were coming out and saying, wow, I had no idea that something so simple as taking the time to do tapping every day could really change our life. And they learned that in a 45-minute session. So we're going to give that to you today. So Helen, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm really excited to be here.
Good. So is there anything I missed that you want to add into the intro portion of our day?
I'm just going to reiterate that tapping is so simple and so profound that there's no reason anybody can't learn it. I teach it to little kids even.
And how do they respond to that?
Oh, kids have they have way fewer layers of emotions than adults do. So it doesn't even take nearly as long and they're like good to go. They can clear their emotions. It would be a great thing for every kid to learn how to do.
Gosh, and that it kind of just makes me think of how, unfortunately, as we grow into adulthood, how much more stress and anxiety we take into our life. If only we could stay in that happy childhood realm, things would be so much easier.
Well, we're going to talk about how to get back into that realm of uh, inner peace really easily and quickly if you choose to do it. Nobody
And
can do it for you, but it is pretty easy to do.
so I mentioned that you use the different modalities to really release stress. We use that word a lot, but what does stress really mean? How do you define it?
We do use stress. People say it all the time. Oh, I'm so stressed. Or you might even go to a practitioner, a doctor who says, oh, it's just stress. And I say, saying to somebody, it's just stress is like saying, oh, it's just cancer. Stress is so detrimental to our well-being, and stress is caused. I like to give us an idea. Anytime we have dysregulation in our mind, in our body, in our spirit, we get stressed. And you can think of it as our natural state, our most innermost state is like a glassy lake. And every time something comes along and plops a rock into that lake and causes ripples in the lake, that is what stress is. And most people don't allow their stress to dissipate. They kind of hold on to it and then they get more and more and more. And pretty soon there's a storm on top of the lake. And I really want to help people not have to have that happen again.
So having this storm in our lives, what does that do to our bodies and our mental health?
Well, there is a lot of research that shows that it really backs up what I'm going to say. I would say stress is the energetic cause of all kinds of ailments and even injuries and limiting beliefs. It's stress. And I would go so far as to say, well, you're probably going to ask me this, but what's the cause of our stress?
Okay. What's the cause of our stress, Helen?
Well, I do a lot of workshops and I say, okay, so what's causing your stress? I always ask because I want to see where people are thinking. And usually people will say, well, my boss causes me a lot of stress, my finances, the economy, this, that, the other thing. And I don't diminish what people think causes their stress, but I want you to know that's not what's actually causing your stress. What's actually causing your stress is your thinking, your thoughts about these things that are happening. These things are just happening. There are very few things that actually that happen that actually cause us stress. You would have to be in the exact location of an extreme event, be in the midst of it for the event to cause you stress. Otherwise, it's just thought.
It's our reactions to the things that are happening around us, basically.
And you can take it even a step further. It's our reaction to our thoughts about what's happening. And when you start to kind of get that, like, wow, it is so freeing to know that I have control. I can begin to say, oh, I don't want to diminish anybody, but I can say, that's just a thought. That's just a thought.
My
And then,
sister.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, my sister a while ago, she was researching with some individuals on something called choice theory, and essentially how there are all these things around the world, and your you can choose your reaction to them no matter what it is. It's our own choices how we react to everything. And way back when I was like, yeah, okay, but when this happens, this has to happen. And she's like, no, you can choose what you're going to do. And I that stuck with me. And it was like 30 years or 20 years ago. And
You
so,
can choose what you give your attention to. Like
yes.
the example I use, I live in Portland, and when I look out my window here, I see this idyllic little corner here in the neighborhood that I live in. And I think, okay, my daughter lives in Brooklyn, New York. So I know Brooklyn exists, but I only know it because it's in my mind. Like, I don't know what's happening in Brooklyn, New York right now. And so it does exist. But when I turn away from Brooklyn, does it still exist when I'm not thinking about it? That it doesn't technically still exist in my world when I'm not thinking about it. And there's a lot of freedom in that.
Now so you've been doing this for 12 years, is that correct?
Tapping,
Your
EFT tap.
practice.
Uh-huh.
So what got you into it and how would you define tapping?
Well, I'll tell you what tapping is first.
Okay.
It's a energy healing modality. That's kind of how it is described. It falls under the category of energy psychology. There is an umbrella category, and several techniques fall under that. And it is a combination of acupuncture meridian points, but no needles. You don't have to use needles. You just use your fingertips. You do it on yourself. You don't need to have somebody tap on you. This is why one of the reasons I love it. I can teach it on Zoom. I can teach it. I have clients all over the world that I can work with. And we tap on these specific acupuncture meridian points, and then that soothes the nervous system and kind of calms down your amygdala, and you get calm. And then we start putting in words, and we use words that actually activate these negative things that you have on your mind, these negative thoughts. So you're activating the negativity, soothing your nervous system, and your nervous system gets retrained. Like, oh, that thought doesn't have to make me feel that way anymore. I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. Well, and I've done it with you before, so I completely understand. But what are the words that you incorporate in there? I don't remember that.
Well, with traditional EFT tapping, and there are lots of different kinds of tapping because, of course, tapping's been around for over 30 years now. And as people learn it, they go, "Ooh, let me try this," and "Ooh, let me try that." And we have lots of techniques of tapping, but the traditional EFT, the basic, you tap on the side of your hand and say, let's say you are feeling this stress or fear, you would say, even though I feel this fear, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And we go through and we use other phrases to remind us what we're tapping about. But that's the basic statement. That's the get you started statement. And it's difficult to describe. How do I come up with the statements that I come up with? Well, I don't know. After 12 years, I
You've
couldn't.
got it figured out.
Well, I don't have it figured out. I don't figure it out in advance. I don't know. I never know what I'm going to say when I tap. I call it, I wait for the download. It, for example, when I did the Breast Friends luncheon,
Mhm.
I asked for volunteers. Is there anything you want to tap about? And so I just wait till somebody tells me. They tell me
Okay.
basically what we're going to tap about, what we're going to say. And I ask a few questions like, where do you feel that in your body? How intense is it, this emotion? And then we tap after one round of tapping, which is the side of the hand plus 8 other tapping points. Super simple. We can link you to all the details. After one round, sometimes people's intensity can dissipate completely, which is pretty amazing because it takes less than 30 seconds. Isn't it worth it to feel better? To take 30 seconds to feel better. Sometimes, of course, it takes a little bit longer, and sometimes it takes longer. It just depends on the person and how many layers of emotions there are, but it's very effective, super effective.
Now, you said it's been around for about 30 years.
Mhm.
Have there been research studies on it or science behind it to say, "Hey, this is what it is and this is why and how it works?"
Absolutely. There's a ton of research, and the link that I always give people, two links. There's a whole book called The Science Behind Tapping, and it's available on Amazon, or you can find used copies of it. It was written not that long ago by a doctor in Australia. Her name is Peta Stapleton. She's a wonderful woman, and she's a total proponent of tapping. And so she decided to do some really good clinical research on the effects of tapping. And she wrote a whole book on all of these studies that have been done and why it works and how it works. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't always understand the how of it, but quite frankly, I don't need to know how it works. I just need to know that it works. And I didn't make this up. And then there is a website called EFT Universe, and I'll also send you the link for that. There is a huge compilation of research available on that website. They link you to everybody who's done any research. But yeah, this is gold star clinical research that's been done.
And I'm assuming anyone can do this. You mentioned children as well.
Anyone. And people will often, I mean, when I give a demonstration, I'm teaching people how to use it. And I always say, I want you to go home and try this for yourself. I don't recommend going home and telling everybody else they have to try it because nobody wants to hear that. But use it for yourself. And yeah, I have taught little kids. I have clients who've taught their kids. I mean, it is so easy. And there have been some groups that have taken EFT into the schools. I've tried a few times to get into the schools in Portland, but there's a lot of bureaucratic stuff
Mhm.
that sometimes will get in the way, and it wasn't really my top priority. But in some places, there are some schools where they use it in the schools, and where they use it in the schools, bullying almost goes away
Wow.
because kids feel better. You don't If you feel good, you don't need to bully.
Mhm.
If you feel safe to, clear out your stuff in the morning, let's say in a classroom, the teacher leads the class through 3 minutes of tapping or 4 minutes of tapping every day just to get them started for the day and be ready for the day. It's like taking off your dirty boots outside the classroom. Leave all that stuff out, and you don't have to put your boots back on when you finish your day. And kids get better grades, they study better, their test results are better. I just think it's super powerful.
So you can really do it anywhere. You don't have to be in a specific place.
That's exactly right. You can do it in a business meeting. You can do it in a theater. You can do it. I've done it just before a presentation if I'm feeling a little nervous or something like that. You can do it anywhere. And we also have some techniques so that you can do what we call stealth tapping. So nobody even knows what you're doing. Not that I think nobody cares anymore, right? Nobody cares. A lot of people know about tapping.
Now, you probably said this earlier, but I want to reiterate. What does the EFT stand for?
Oh, that's a good question. We hardly ever use EFT anymore because there are other EFTs out there, but it originally stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques.
Okay.
And it was created by a guy named Gary Craig, who's still around, but he's even moved on to a new form of EFT. He has something called optimal EFT, but he's a brilliant guy. He was an engineer. He's the one that created this thing,
Hmm.
an engineer doing this sort of woo woo thing, but it turned out not to be woo woo after all.
Well, whatever it is, it works because I've done it and you've done other workshops for us before. And we had one woman who was having a lot of chronic back pain. And I don't know if you remember this. And we did the whole tapping exercise. And afterwards, she felt so much better. Like she got up and was moving and stretching. And we were all amazed at just seeing something like that virtually, how well that it worked.
I am still amazed at how well it works. I know it works, and yet sometimes I'll just be like blown away how well it works.
Well, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to continue to dive into tapping. But listeners, please stay with us. If you need our services, please go to our website, breastfriends.org, and check out patient programs. If you would like to donate, you can go to our website. There's a big donate button or text BF radio to 41444 to help Breast Friends continue on its mission to ensure that no one goes through cancer alone. Stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Michelle Beck. My guest is Helen McConnell, personal transformation coach. And today we are talking about tapping and what it can do for you. So, Helen, before the break, you had mentioned a couple things that I want to go back to. One of them is the 8 different parts that we tap on as part of this process. And then I want to ask about stealth tapping. So, if you're not watching, now is the time to go to the YouTube video and watch because we're going to kind of go through this together. So, Helen, can you walk us through the process and tell us where you do the 8 different tapping things?
Absolutely, I'd love to.
My
So,
technical term, I apologize.
no, no, we're not a very technical group. I mean, we like to keep it as simple as possible, but we use tapping points, we call them, just tapping points. And most tappers and tapping practitioners do it sort of the traditional way, and some veer off from that. But we'll start with you start on the side of your hand. You can take 2, 3, 4 fingers, whatever you want to tap on this side of your hand. It's between your knuckle and your wrist. There's a fleshy part of your hand there. And you just gently tap there. And I'm holding my hand up here so you can see it, but you can keep that down. If they didn't want to be seen, you can keep it down in your lap and do it. Anyway, this point in particular, in many of the research studies, shows cortisol, which is the stress hormone, dropping noticeably just after a few minutes of tapping on the side of the hand.
Hmm.
So what I always say is this is like telling your body, okay, I'm upset about something, but I'm she, she's tapping on her hand. We can't be being chased by a tiger. Like our stress system is really ancient. And I think it's time that humanity upgrade their stress system a little bit, which having enough people working on this, it will raise the system to a higher level. But this was created, they say, from our ancient ancestors who would get chased by a tiger, and they'd need to have all the resources they needed to run or fight or freeze. And when you want to run or fight or freeze, your digestion does not need to work properly.
Hmm.
If it's a really severe situation, your body needs to evacuate any extra weight or any extra food that it's carrying, and so that's why when we get nervous or upset, we have those reactions. It's
Hmm.
ancient. And the blood flows out to your extremities and out of your brain. You don't need a lot of cognitive resonance. when you're in a stress situation. You just need to get the hell away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when you've had a trauma or a super stressful situation, or you get nervous, this is what happens to a lot of people when they're speaking in public.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, like, they leave their body practically. And that's totally normal and understandable, but it isn't a requirement. You can learn to be present in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're speaking to a lot of people. So anyway, that's the tapping starts to bring everything back online.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm not going to go into the statements just yet. After we tap here, and you only stay there for a couple seconds, you go right to the top of your head. There's right at the crown of your head there. You can use two hands or one hand. I generally use one hand, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. People think, well, this is pretty lax.
I know, like, is there a wrong or right way to do it?
I say no. The only wrong thing is to not do it at all.
Okay.
And if you get confused on the points, don't worry about it. You don't have to do them in a particular order or anything. That it's really brilliant. And then you go to your inner eyebrow. So I'll take my glasses off. You right there on the inner eyebrow, not over the nose,
Mm-hmm.
not way out here, but the inner eyebrow. But here's the thing. If you do tap over your nose, it's okay. I just want you to know where the actual point is.
Got it.
Then you go to the side of the eye right there where you're the pointy part of your eye. And then under the eye, right there on that bone right there, just gently. And I'm using 2 fingers, but you can use 1 or 3. Then
This
we
is
go
like how I put on my eye cream.
exactly how you dab on your eye cream.
Mm-hmm.
And then under your nose. And then this point is called the chin point, but you're technically not on the chin. You're above your chin, below your
At the
lip.
little divot
The
between your
little
lip and
divot
your chin. Mm-hmm.
that I can never remember what it's called. There is
There is a name, I know. I
there's
can't
an
remember
official
anything, so.
name. Yeah. And then we go to the collarbones. Just find your 2 collarbones or 1 collarbone. And you can see I am just tapping right through my clothes. You don't have to get right on your skin if you don't want to. It works. If you're wearing a coat, you can tap through the coat. And then we go under the arm. So it's hard to see me. You can reach right under your arm, like I call it monkey style, or you can reach across like this. And if you have, if you're having surgery or anything like that, don't tap where it hurts. If you have breast surgery and you're in an uncomfortable position, don't tap where it hurts.
I know my husband always, like, ouch, that hurts. He's like, well, don't do that. I'm like, thank you. That's helpful.
Well, I know some people think, oh, if I don't do it there, I'm not doing it right.
Now
It is
there
so
are
forgiving.
there are guides you can print out, right? That shows you the different spots and the order you should do it in, correct?
Absolutely. But if you go online, if you go to YouTube and type in tapping, you'll find 1,000 different practitioners, me included. We all have our YouTube channel, and we post all kinds of videos about, and you can tap along.
I love that.
And some tappers start with the eyebrow point. I always start with the top of the head. Some start here and end up here. It doesn't matter.
Now, say you are in a business meeting and you're feeling very anxious, and I would assume the stealth tapping is just doing it on the side of your hand below the table.
That's absolutely one way to do it.
Mhm.
Um, but some people might get, well, I don't know. Do people handwrite anymore? I mean, if you needed to be writing something and you were feeling stressed, it, you can do this with one hand or two hands. You can take your thumb and you can tap right on the nail bed on the side of your finger, your first finger,
Mhm.
middle finger, ring finger, baby finger. And you can just go around and around and around and around. And those are also acupuncture meridian points.
Mhm.
Really, quite frankly, we naturally know how to do all this. When you get stressed, a lot of times people go, oh my God, these are tapping points right here. We know how to do this. We go, oh my God, or,
Mhm.
whatever we do.
Mhm.
So you can go down the sides of your fingers like this. We call this stealth tapping. And the more often, the more you can do it when you're driving in a car. If it's safe, you can use the steering wheel for the side of your hand. If
Mhm.
you can't do any more than the side of the hand, that's okay. you want to begin to build this emotional resilience, the peace and calm resilience. And it does build up over time.
I love it because I'm just sitting here doing it now, and I was like, it makes you focus on the immediate present, what you and that it kind of takes you out of the outside stressful atmosphere and just focusing on that.
Well, you've really hit on something that is so important. We live in a world that hardly lets us stay in the present moment. You have to practice being in the present moment, and that's where peace is. Outside the present moment, well, you're either in the past or you're in the future, and neither of those is very soothing usually.
Yeah, it's not the good place to be because you can't change the past and you don't know what the future is going to bring. But myself included, I do have anxiety. So I'm always thinking about the future and what's going to go wrong and what are the problems. But if I focus on being present, and I can definitely see how tapping will help you do that.
And you can use some phrases as you tap. If you feel anxious, one of the things that I teach people, and I've been doing 2 weeks of morning and afternoon tapping with the Breast Friends group,
Hmm.
and I teach every day. I say, okay, you can determine what your feeling is, what your emotion is. You can call it anxiety, you can call it whatever you want, but then notice the energy of that feeling and then take the label off it. Just notice the energy and tap around while you tap about that energy. So you might tap on the side of your hand and say, even though I feel this anxious feeling, I'm choosing to unconditionally love and accept myself. And that little phrase in there, the love and accept myself, that was written into the very first tapping 30 something years ago. That's a huge part of it, of our true healing, is to unconditionally love and accept ourselves. And most people don't do it, but we keep trying.
So it's a hard thing to do, but when you were working towards that point, and I'm 51 now, and I'm breast cancer has changed my life and my body so much, but I'm finally at the point where I'm like, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's what I think. And I one of my mantras that I picked up last year is I'm grateful for this breath, this body, and this life. And
That's a
it helps me.
beautiful that's all we need is this breath, this body, and this life in this moment,
Hmm.
because sometimes we go, "Well, I don't know what's gonna happen next week," or I remember what did happen." We only have this moment, but our brains wanna go jumping ahead and trying to figure things out.
Now you
So,
started,
I
sorry,
did
a group
I
with go ahead.
well, we started this round, and if anybody's following along, I just wanna show them
Oh
how to
yeah.
finish, okay? So
Yes.
then after that, you can tap right to the top of the head, and you can say, "This anxious energy,"
This
uh,
anxious energy.
on the eyebrow, "This energy in my," maybe you feel it in your chest or your gut or your solar plexus, wherever it is, just say, I'm noticing this energy in my gut." And then I teach people to tap on the side of the eye and say, I don't need to judge this as good or bad. It's just energy under the eye. I don't need to try to get rid of this energy under the nose, and I don't need to hang on to this energy on the chin. I'm simply observing this energy on the collarbone and allowing it to do what it needs to do. And go under the arm, this energy. Yeah. And then you just take a deep breath. Now, what I just demonstrated, there will be tapping practitioners out there going, well, that's not the way we normally do it. This is 12 years of experience that has
Sure.
come to this. And anything physical that happens in our body starts as energy. Anything.
Hmm.
And so we want to allow the body to release that energy, but you kind of have to feel it and observe it to let it go. Not always, but and the more you practice this, the more you'll be like, oh, I don't want to feel stressed. So let me let that go right now. Let me sit with that. Let me observe it. Let me just let it go. Fear, anger, frustration, we have just lots of names for things that are not what I would call unconditional love.
For sure. Now, you just mentioned that you are currently working with a group from breast friends
Uh-huh.
who've all gone through breast cancer. What kind of emotions do you see need to be, I guess, tapped out from those who've gone through a breast cancer diagnosis?
Well, I can't say it's unique to people with breast cancer, but
Sure.
I would and in this thing that we're doing, well, I told them what we were going to tap on. The first one is like uh fear from diagnosis
Hmm.
or terror or whatever it is, because it's usually really it's like, oh my God, shock, fear,
Shock.
terror.
Yes.
And shock is especially when you feel shock, it's really important to get that energy moving again because shock is like the ultimate freeze response in your body.
Hmm.
And if you are supporting somebody going through this or you are going through this, you want to, as much as you can, breathe through the diagnosis. I don't think doctors are real great at how they give the information, but it's hard to receive that information. It's
Yes.
really hard to receive it. So, and here's the thing I want people to really get. If you forget to tap in the moment, that's okay. You can tap. I tap with people 50 years later after an event and we can still clear up old stuff. So, shock, anger, fear, frustration, um hopelessness, helplessness. These are kind of the general emotions that come up. And there is hope for the emotions.
So the hope is that you will use the tapping to move those negative emotions out and away.
Well, yes, but not efforting. It took me a long time to get this.
Okay.
You are not moving them out. You're allowing them to move. Because if you try to push something out of you, what you resist persists. And we really want to just, like I said, you just sit back and kind of observe, what does that energy feel like? Oh, wow. And if you can call it energy instead of something else, it's a lot easier to deal with it in a impersonal way. Observe the energy, let it flow, let it go out of you.
So the words are definitely helpful as well. If someone is just learning, having those sentences or phrases to guide the energy into the different processes and then out on its own.
Absolutely. The words are helpful, but they're not required.
Okay.
If you can observe, just notice. And I would say it this way, if you can sit with the feeling and not have to run away from it, just sit and notice it and just tap around. You don't even need to use any words. We like words because it keeps us on track, but
That is true. Are there any negative effects of tapping?
we don't know of any
Okay. I
after
like that's the best
37
answer
times.
ever.
Yeah, no negative side effects, and that's not hyperbole.
Perfect.
If
Well,
if something comes up while you're tapping, it just means it needed to come up, and you just keep tapping.
got it. Well, we are going to take another quick break, but listeners, please stay with us. If you would like to reach out to me, I'm at Michelle Beck at breastfriends.org. So stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Michelle Beck. My guest is Helen McConnell, and we are talking about the effects of tapping and what it can do to let the stress, which we're going to not call stress, we're going to call it energy, leave our bodies and get to a better spot. So, Helen, what are the variety of clients that come to you? What are they trying to get through? I know you've helped cancer patients, obviously, but what other things are people bringing with them when they come see you?
That's a great question. Over the years, I have worked with people from all over the world for all kinds of issues and things that just they may come to me with a symptom that presents itself, but under the symptom is the actual cause. I always want to get to the true cause of whatever's showing up because there's always something under the symptom, always an emotional something. So we want to clear that stuff up. They may come to me for there have been physical things. I tried to write it down because I always forget, but um let's see. Um, one of the most interesting ones is a woman called me, or she set up a consultation, and we were talking on the consultation. She wanted to find out if tapping could help plantar fasciitis. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's related to the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sure, it can help. It definitely can help. So we were just still on our consultation. And I said, well, generally speaking, plantar fasciitis has a root cause of this emotion, right? Has something to do with your mother. And she goes, oh my God. And so we start tapping. This is a woman who's my age, and she had just had an issue with her own mother who was 90 something. And we started tapping through that and releasing the, the trauma of this event with her mother.
Mm-hmm.
She'd already been to doctors over this plantar fasciitis, and they were getting ready to do surgery. And on this call, she just suddenly goes, oh my God, it's gone. This plantar fasciitis was gone. And that's when that happens, I always go, oh God, it still surprises me when that happens, but not really. And we had gotten to the root cause. I like people to understand that our physical body is a manifestation of our subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is super huge and super powerful, but we're not aware of what's going on in there a lot of the time.
That's amazing that something like that can happen. And but the fact that plantar fasciitis is associated with issues with your mother, I'm gonna have to check that out because who doesn't have issues with their mother?
Well, pretty much a lot of people, almost everyone has some issue with their mother. And I have come to the belief, and my mother's still alive. She's 92. And I've come to the belief, and tapping has helped me get here. I was never a religious person, but I really wanted to be more spiritual in nature.
Hmm.
But I have lots of clients who are religious. I have Christian clients, on the regular Protestant side. I have Catholic clients. I have Muslim clients. And there are lots of sects of Muslim religions, and I've worked with all kinds of people. I have worked with atheist and agnostic. Tapping doesn't interfere with your religion,
Okay.
and tapping helps you brings you closer to whatever you do believe in. If you believe in God or Allah, tapping will bring you closer to whatever you believe in. It's amazing because it brings you closer to who we truly are. And I can say that without a doubt. After all these years, that's what I finally realized. Oh, we're all just trying to get back to who we really are and be comfortable with who we are. And
Ha-
tapping is such a great tool for that.
Have you come across any skeptics? They're like, "Oh, this isn't going to work for me." And then you go through this process and they're pleasantly surprised?
One of my favorite stories is when I do a meetup once a month. I do it on Zoom now, but I used to do it in person here in Portland. And one night, this guy was in the group, in the crowd, and he goes exactly that. He goes, well, this is working for everybody else, but it's not going to work for me. And I said, okay, well, are you willing to just do a little tapping around that? And he said, okay. So we tap, and we were talking, I don't even remember what his issue was, but we tapped about, even though I think this will work for everyone else, I'm sure it won't work for me. And I accept myself anyway. With tapping, we just say what is, we don't try to sugarcoat it. And as we're tapping, he starts cracking up and he goes, oh my God, this thing that I've been actually trying to hang on to is leaving me. It's like an exorcism kind of thing. He goes, it's leaving me. And he was laughing so hard because it did work for him, even though he expressly almost didn't want it to work for him. And it was a beautiful thing. And he became a regular. And then next time he brought his wife, and, you know, we can tap on anything. But no, you don't have to believe it to make it work. And you really, if you tap and just keep an open mind, you can resist it to the point where it doesn't work. I believe some people can.
Hmm.
But if
But
you're
why would you?
well, because okay, that's a good question. Why would you resist something that could work for you? Uh, because what if deep down inside you had this belief, an incorrect belief, that people will resent you or reject you if you get better or you change. Because a lot of people have that fear. If I change, if I become who I really want to be, my sister's not going to be happy with me or my mother or whatever. And that is a strong enough thing to keep us in it may not be comfortable, but it's familiar, a familiar state. And I love when people let all that stuff go. It's totally possible. I was like that.
I love that. Just the fact that going back to that story though, that the gentleman seemed to be like, "Oh, this isn't going to work for me," but I'm here, so I'll try it, and then ended up bringing his wife and others because it really did. And I imagine, there was a question I was going to ask you about the best way to help others with tapping, and I think that's just introducing them to it and getting them to understand what it's all about.
And if they're not interested in what you're talking about, what I always tell my clients, because sometimes people say, "Would you be willing to work with my teenage son?" Absolutely, but you got to do your work first. So I always say the best way to introduce someone to tapping is to do your own work.
Put in
You
the
know,
work.
just be who you want to be in the world, and then the people around you, this is one thing that we don't talk about in our Western culture all that much, but when you change, the people around you change. When the energy that you emit changes, which it will when you do this work, the way people react to you is different.
Because you're putting out a different energy.
Yeah. And we recognize that people give off energy, but you can't see it, so you think, "Oh, that's just my imagination," but most everyone's had the experience of going into a room after two people have been fighting in the room and they're not fighting. You can still feel it in the room.
Mhm.
Even if those two people aren't there, if they've left the room, the energy in the room still has that vibration in it. So yeah, we are way more powerful than we give ourselves credit for.
Now, if someone you had mentioned the woman asking if you would help her son, presumably that teenage son is going through a lot, maybe even in therapy or something,
Mhm.
some other modality of counseling. How can I'm assuming tapping will not interfere with other things that you have going on.
Well, when it comes to teenagers, and I have worked with quite a few teenagers, but only if they want to.
Yes,
I would never work with anybody who their parent is making them come.
sure.
No, that won't work. And if you're going to therapy, I say use tapping while you're in therapy because most therapists know about tapping. So if you're sitting there talking to your therapist, tap while you're talking, you know? And so, yeah, or you can bring the challenges from therapy into tapping. And this is just totally my opinion. I think therapy is a great tool for most people to use, but tapping works a lot faster. And I'm not dissing therapy at all. I had a client who came to me after therapy, and then we got to moving stuff so quickly. She said to me after about 3 sessions, she said, "I'm going to go back to therapy because tapping just clears stuff too quickly." It was like scary, it was scary. And I said, "Okay, go back to therapy." I said, "I totally support whatever you want to do." So she went back to therapy. And like 2 weeks later, she emailed me and she says, "Never mind, I want to come back." Because she needed to just compare the two.
Mhm.
They can work together or tapping works as a great standalone.
It's funny. I see a myofascial therapist fairly frequently and an acupuncturist, and they both become friends. And I consider those sessions where they're working on my body also therapy sessions because as they're working on the different aspects of my body, I'm talking through things and releasing those emotions at the same time. And it's incredibly powerful. And I'm sure you've experienced the same thing.
Absolutely. I'm not like you can only use tapping. My massage therapist, he's this really strong guy, and so when he can hit a spot and I might start crying.
Hmm.
And it's not because it hurt, it's because something got released from deep down in. We hold this stuff, we store it in our bodies, and one of the phrases that I tell people is the human body is meant to be a conduit for this energy, electrical, whatever you want to call it, emotion, not a container. It's a conduit, not a container. Don't, it's not meant to hold on to emotions. It's meant to let them flow through. And we all can learn how to do that.
Now, if someone is interested in learning about tapping or visiting a a, I was going to say a tapper, but that just brings up like Fred
No,
Astaire videos in
well,
my or memes in my head. If they're not here in the Portland area where you are, how can you find a tapping practitioner to work with?
well, I would recommend, first of all, these days, most every tapper I know, and we call each other tappers,
Okay.
works by Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, during COVID, I was busier than ever, and I just stopped doing anything in person because, well, for one thing, we couldn't. But then when we kind of could again, I thought, no, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier on Zoom. It's so much, I can see everything you're doing on Zoom.
Perfect.
So you can contact just about any practitioner. You can go to that EFT Universe website that I told you about, and I'll link. I know there's another page on there for other practitioners, and there's also the Tapping Solution is an organization that's been around quite a while. They do an annual event called the Tapping World Summit, which is a free event, and all the world's best tappers are on there, and they cover all kinds of topics, and they raise money for all kinds of things, and they've just, it's because of the Tapping Solution and the Tapping World Summit that tapping has become so ubiquitous. Tapping is now being openly used in workplaces. I just love that. We talk about stealth tapping, but I mean, I've presented at Nike and I've presented at other large organizations, and
Mm-hmm.
they're open to these techniques because they work.
I was just thinking it would be fabulous for you to go into, or I'm sure obviously you do this, but do a session, it like during a sales kickoff or something like that. Like this is something you can learn to move that stressful energy out so you can be more productive and a better overall human and a better at your job.
Absolutely, because peak performance isn't possible if we have these limiting beliefs that are holding us back. So tapping is a great way to get rid of limiting beliefs. And you can, most people, let me back up. It is difficult for us to find our own limiting beliefs, but other people can hear them in a heartbeat.
That's a quote right there that we need to keep and work on.
Yeah, so other people can hear you. People tell me their limiting beliefs usually within the first 5 or 10 minutes, but they don't know they've told me. They don't even know they know that they have these limiting beliefs.
That's a whole nother subject that we need to talk about for another hour at a different
It's
time.
totally another thing to talk about. Yeah,
Yes.
but we can clear up our limiting beliefs.
Perfect. Well, we are almost out of time, Helen. So tell our listeners where they can find and follow you on social media and connect if they would like to set up sessions.
My website is my name, helenmcconnell.com. And you can find everything that I'm doing there. I do free consultations. You can schedule right there on it'll link you over to my scheduler, free 20-minute consultation. And we can decide if you even want to work together, if there's something we could do together. I'll be happy to tell you, no, I don't think I can deal with that. I don't want people to spend money on something that isn't going to get the results. But ultimately, it is up to the client to be willing to do the tapping. I have a YouTube channel where people follow me. I forget what it's called. Google Helen McConnell tapping.
And it will all come up.
It'll all come up. And I'm not huge on social media. I do some Instagram, but I don't do any other social media.
So the website is the place to go, helenmcconnell.com.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, Helen, again, thank you so much for being here and sharing. I actually feel fabulous now after all sitting here and tapping this whole time. So thank you so much again. And
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you
yes,
for
if you listen to this, please go back and watch it on the YouTube channel so you can see exactly what we did. So, listeners, if you or a loved one need our services, please go to breastfriends.org. You can make a donation on our website or by texting BF Radio to 41444. You can find this show on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel, all the major podcast platforms, and on the Breast Friends YouTube channel. Please subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I am at Michelle Beck at breastfriends.org. I will be back next week. And until then, remember, we rise by lifting each other.